Hello and welcome to the video on Power BI. In this video, let us look at how to transform a significantly different data set using Power Query Editor. So the data set that I've used for this session of the video is as shown here. So here we have three different columns split over months. So this is very unique, right? So we also have like six column, six rows with three blank rows and then some of the other information. Let us look at how we transform this data using Power BI, Power Query Editor. So just to shorten the time, I've already uploaded the data into the Power Query Editor of Power BI. So I'm just refreshing this once again just to make sure we have the latest data here. So as you can see, we have this data set imported into Power Query Editor. As you saw earlier in the Excel sheet, we still have the same data that is spread across months. It has three different columns: serial number, brand, quantity, and date as of. That is spread over different months. As you can see in the row 5, Jan, Feb, March, and so on and so forth. So before I proceed further on transforming this dataset, let me give you a small idea of what all we have in this dataset that requires to be handled to make it good for reporting purposes. So at the top we have two blank rows. At the bottom we have seven rows which might or might not be useful for us, and we also have one more row that is in the mid which might not be very useful. We have another row here that is also quite not useful for us. So before proceeding, let me start with the first activity to transform this dataset. The first option that we are going to do in this dataset is to remove these two unwanted rows. So this can be done using the remove rows option here. You can select the remove top rows. So this will give you an option to specify how many rows you want to remove. I'm just going to select two rows here. Clicking on OK, this is going to transform my dataset, thereby removing the first two rows. This is also visible here in the query settings pane, wherein it shows the step that has got added now. The next step I'm going to do is remove the bottom rows. Here, as I already told you, this might or might not be of very much use to us, but in this case, I'm just going to ignore these three rows. So which means I'm going to remove these seven rows at the bottom. So this can be achieved using remove bottom rows. So I'm going to select 7 here, which clicking on OK is going to remove the bottom 7 rows. Now this is looking somewhat okay. The next step that I want to do is promote this row to become the column names, which can be achieved using the use first row as header option. So clicking on that, my first row is going to become the column. Now next comes the two rows, row 1 and row 2, which I certainly do not want to have here. So I'm going to remove this first row as well using the same remove top rows option. I'm going to select one here. So this row is also removed. Now before we proceed further on this, I just want to transform this data set to something meaningful so that we can report on it. Of course, I just want to remove the other row as well. I'm going to make this 1 to 2. So this does not require us to do the same option again. Instead, we can click on the settings pane, which is going to give us the option to change the number of rows. So this dataset looks somewhat okay. Now here comes the trick. Now I want to make this dataset into a column based table so that we have all data grouped together, thereby making it easy to report on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to group by the data. The moment I click on group by, a new pop-up window is going to appear. I'm going to select advanced here and I'm going to select serial number, then the brand, then the date as of. If I want, I can select, but here I don't want that. So I'm just going to stop with two columns to group by. And next in the new column section, I am going to type in January. And Here, this is not going to give us any option, but the moment I change to sum, this is going to be enabled. Now, this shows all the columns that are present in the dataset. I'll click on quantity. Similarly, I'm going to add one more aggregation where I'll name this as February, and I'm going to change the option to sum, and then here I'm going to use the quantity 3. The reason I'm doing this is, as you can see in this data set, the first month is January, which has 4 columns, and then the second month is February, which has 4 columns. Third month is March, which has 4 columns, and so on and so forth. So the quantity refers to this, and quantity 3 refers to this, and it goes on. So to get the January numbers, I should use this quantity column, and to get the February numbers, I should use this quantity column, which is quantity 3 as per Power BI. So going forward like this, I'm going to create all other columns, which I'm going to skip for time purposes. Now I have grouped all the columns into months, as you can see here. You can see that I have data only till September. The reason is, post that month I don't have data in my source sheet. So you can see that October, November and December are empty. Again, going back to the sheet, so until now it is looking somewhat okay, wherein you have two columns, one for serial number and brand, and the data for the months spread over different columns. Now here's the trick. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to transform and click on unpivot. But before that, you should understand that I've selected all the new columns that I've created in the name of months. So the moment I click on unpivot, my data is going to be transformed to something very beautiful. So as you can see here, now I just have 4 columns: serial number, brand, attribute and value. Now it is here. I'm going to change this column to month, and this column to quantity. So now this data set is purely a column based simple data set to effectively report on. It is going to have just the column serial number, brand, month and quantity. Here, one more thing you should notice is the serial number is not quite good. So maybe what we can do to handle this is add a column. This column is going to be an index column, and this index column, the moment I add, is going to generate a new column called index. This index column gives you an option to start with which number and increment by how many numbers. So it is currently starting with 0, meaning my first row is going to be numbered as 0, but I want it to be numbered as 1. So I'll click on 1 and click OK. So this index column is moved here, this created here. Now I just want to move this index column to my first. So it is moved here. This column now becomes a redundant one. This can be removed simply by using the option present here for choose columns, or you can also use remove columns. Remove columns is going to give you two options, like if you want to remove this column or if you want to keep this column and remove some other columns. And similarly, choose option is going to give you options to choose a column, or you can also go to a column. I'm just going to remove column here. So the moment I click on this, my serial number column is removed, and I'm going to name this as serial number. That's it. We have a good data set to report on. That's all in this part of video on Power Query Editor in Power BI. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe for more similar videos.